welcome back to the Counselor's Garden. We're here with some fairly crowded tomato seedlings, as you can see. I may have went a little gung-ho here, where got a little more property and I maybe overseeded a bit, and I've thinned some, but it just breaks my heart to do that. Tomatoes are extremely resilient. As you can see, I'm sure you've seen videos before, but the hairs up the tomato plant stem all turn into roots if you bury them. Tomatoes are meant to, in the wild, which, we don't really see wild tomatoes anymore, but in the wild they would grow up and flop over, and, where they're laying on the ground, they will form roots into the ground. So very resilient. Tomatoes are actually some that, you don't want your plants to be leggy, but if tomatoes go leggy, like, no big deal. You just bury them a little deeper and they actually get a stronger root system. So what I'm doing today, we're a little early on this. Usually I would wait till, they have maybe 2-3 sets of true leaves. But as you can see, these have at least one set of true leaves. Some of these look better than others, but I've done this before. Most of these are gonna survive just fine. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna separate these into these nice containers here. I'm just going to pot up a little early rather than put them back into something like this where I would have to, pot up in, a week or two anyway. So I'm just gonna go for it and pot up here. I'm gonna bury them pretty deep, the roots here. If we compare the sizes here, the roots will be pretty far down, if we bury up. So I think they'll do just fine in these now. It'll give me a huge variety of tomato plants. So what I've got here is a tub of potting mix mixed with some perlite, vermiculite. This has a very, very, very low dose of fertilizer in it, just slow release stuff. I'm talking like, a 0.1% of stuff. So just enough to give it a little boost and some feed. I found that in this bigger box here, which was just a mix of cocoa coir, vermiculite, and perlite. The seeds sprout well, but they pretty much instantly run out of food. So what I've done with my own mixed is I added, like a quarter or a fifth dose of compost in there, just to give it something to eat on. Like, plants pretty quickly run out of that initial burst of food that they get. So show you a couple things. I really like these little trays here. They're kind of thin, but when the time comes, you can squeeze it to break the dirt off the side, grab the plant and pull it out when it's time to transplant. So they're really easy to transplant. I love them. What I've done with these ones is I've just put some tape on them so that I can label them without using those stupid plant sticks like this that I have to throw away, and I don't know, I just don't want to waste them. So with these, we also have some cabbages here, which I've also gone gung-ho on, but these are looking really good. Little crowded, but cabbages have sort of a similar thing. They can flop over. You can bury them pretty high up to those first leaves, and they will also start to form some roots. So what I'm going to do with them, actually, because they take a little longer to grow, I'm going to put them in each just their own individual one of these, because they'll be able to stay in those potentially until I plant them outside. Here, in 2 weeks or so, I'll be able to put these outside just fine. Maybe could even put them outside, this weekend or next weekend, but I want to give them a little more time to grow in a controlled environment. So let me just kind of show you what I do here. I don't know if you can see over here, but I load this up with some of my mix here. I just loosely in there, and what I'll do is I'll tap it like this. Rather than pack it down with my fingers, I have kind of a little bit of a heavy hand, I guess. So I'll tap it down, and then I'll, feel it a little bit just to see, and it's packed down pretty good. You can see it's not super high up. I'll top off the top, and I won't even pack that down really. I'll use that looser pack to plant in. And all I'll do, I've got my specialty planting tool, which is literally a chopstick, but I'm just gonna, put a little hole in there like this, if you can see that, and drop a cabbage down in there one at a time. They'll be easy to separate. I'll even, maybe show you right here. I'll just squeeze this bottom a little bit, grab all these and pull up, it comes up fairly easy. I'll be able to roll this around and plant one in each of those, and maybe if there's some weaker ones, I'll be able to compost those, or just munch on them right now. But that's how we'll do the cabbages. I mean, tomato plants, pretty similar. I'll fill this up about 1/2 or 3/4 with my potting mix. This stuff's pretty heavy, so it doesn't really need to be packed down too much. I'll do the tapped method here. And what I'll do here is just with my finger, I'll dig out a little hole in here, about like that, big enough for the tomatoes to fit down in. And I will bury them up to the stem. So do the same thing here. I'll grab this, do a little tapping on it, grab them very gently. They easily come apart here. I'll just kind of roll the dirt around and pull. And what we have here is I got quite a few roots. I'll put it down in there so that, it's just barely up there. And now I will backfill in around this, pop some more dirt down in there. I'll pack this down around the roots a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll just fill up to about almost the bottom. You don't want the leaves touching it, but like 1/4 of an inch from them is perfectly fine, and all of that will turn into a healthy root system and allow these plants to just really flourish. So I'm gonna get through doing some of this and show you the end result here. All right, gang, we finally are finished after a long time. You saw what it was like in the beginning. Now we're looking a lot more organized here. We've got 1 plant per container. I do have, let's see, this whole row here is all the same tomatoes, so I didn't label them that well. This row here is all the same, and this row here is all the same. This one with the styrofoams, it's got a couple mixtures of things. I think it's got some German streaked tomatoes and some Brandywine tomatoes. I'm looking forward to growing those. And we have kind of the cabbages and brassicas and some dwarf tomatoes here, all split up. So we'll see how those do. Not particularly worried if, the transplanting does too much. Like, I can just seed plant outside. So the last step that I like to do in this process when I'm doing any sort of up potting and stuff is I like to give them a drink and a bite to eat. So what I do is I have this fish emulsion stuff that fish fertilizer, fish emulsion is what it's always called. This is like, the stuff that always helps my plants. So it says, 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. That's for full size plants. So first of all, I'm using 2 quarts. So we got to cut that down. And then I cut that down again by 1/4. So I've got a tablespoon here. I'm going to do about 1/4 tablespoon in this, maybe even less than 1/4. Doesn't have to be super precise as long as it's a very, very diluted mix. And what I'll do is I'll bottom water. I'll fill them up to, about, it's got to cover the bottom things, but just like, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and let these sit for about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, and get them back under the grow lights. So looking forward to seeing these things take off and do a good job. Yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for checking this out, and got any comments or questions or pointers, I'd love to hear them. All right, take care. Have a blessed week.